All right, so hear me out. Here's the reason why you have to sometimes question what people say when they truly don't understand what they're talking about. Oftentimes, when I may share a post about Bitcoin, there's a lot of individuals that quickly jump to the ideal that Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. Now, when somebody says that Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme, the first question I typically ask them is if they actually have read the Bitcoin white paper, or if they've actually done more than maybe like 30 minutes of research or looking at a CNBC article to truly understand what Bitcoin is. The second question I typically ask them is, do they understand what money actually is? Sound money, not monopoly money, sound money. Or have they ever read about the history of monetary systems? Lastly, I usually ask them, if Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme, do they own gold? If they own gold and they understand the difference between sound money and monopoly money that can be printed, then maybe they do understand something about monetary policy. Because if they own gold and they read a lot about monetary policy, that would mean that they'd understand that by holding gold for long periods of time, it's a really good store of value. So this brings me back to the whole concept of Bitcoin, right? Like, Bitcoin has essentially been a very strong store of value. It's outperformed every single asset class that exists over the past decade. And the math and the numbers prove it. When you price things in Bitcoin, right? If you look at the median house of a price since COVID, or even before COVID, the price of that home is falling when you price it in Bitcoin as a hedge for inflationary pressures. So if that's all the case, how can you still possibly say that Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme? If you understand fractional reserve banking and you read about the Fed and how money is printed into oblivion, which is essentially diluting your purchasing power, you would understand that that actually seems pretty questionable as well from a just lifestyle perspective for anybody. Not just individuals in America, but people all over the world that are forced to use dollars because the dollar is the reserve currency. When you understand that the money that exists is printed into thin air, and when money is printed, it is essentially moving money from those that have assets to those and away from those that don't have assets. So the savers and the individuals that don't want to be a trader, they don't want to know everything about the stock market, they just want to earn their money and be able to afford to do the things that they enjoy, they can't. That's because their dollars are being diluted due to monetary policy, due to liquidity being infused into the market. So this isn't a video to just talk about Bitcoin and, rip on anybody that doesn't understand it. I just definitely want people to err on the side of caution that when individuals quickly say that something's a Ponzi scheme, ask them if they understand monetary policy, ask them if they hold gold. If they say they don't, then that means they don't really understand the difference between monopoly money and sound money. And do the own research, right? Do your own knowledge, do your own research, because a lot of people are just saying things based off of maybe reading one article, but they actually don't truly understand sound money versus monopoly money, stores of value that increase your purchasing power, and understand how you can allow yourself to be set up for a more prosperous future. Comment your thoughts below.